Okay, so I've seen a lot of questions recently about how to do seamless textures for iRacing and liveries, and I have a lot of experience with this, so I thought I'd help people out. I'm sorry for my voice, I got the Rona, so there's that. And so I'll show you that this is one of the liveries I did recently. There was a conversion of the Radical SR10, and you can see it has like a ton of really tricky joins. Like there are seams in here that you don't see because of how well it's joined together. Like up here, it's there's a lot, like I leave some here just to sort of have it as an aesthetic choice, but there's a ton of seamless work going on in here. And as you can see, this is really complicated. Um, and it has a ton of layers because of how complicated it is. But I want to make this simpler for people who want to try and do this kind of thing. I have a lot of experience with 3D and retouching as well. I've been using Photoshop since, well, for 30 years. I'm kind of old now. And then I did 3D for a lot of stuff. So I have an understanding of UV textures, which UVs are is the grid of wireframes you see when you enable here, I'll go to this one. These are UVs. These are the coordinates that correspond to the vertex on the actual model. These are tied to those vertexes, and when you lay out something in 3D in a program like Maya or Max, these can move independently of the mesh. And what that does is it creates a problem uh, because what you'll start to notice when you try and mess around with textures in here, and I'll use an example, is that, well, actually, you don't even need to look at this. What you can do is you can kind of see, I'm going to use my guide edges here, and I'll explain how you do this. But what you can see is, you see how these lines diverge as they go to that? These are actually the corresponding edges, and the UVs that meet up. But what do you notice immediately? This is longer than this edge is. So that means that you have to, fix that distortion between the shells. These are called UV shells. This is a UV shell, a UV shell here. So when you create a seamless texture, you have to basically account for this. You can see this series of distortions that happens along the edge. So if you want to do something like this, I'll show you. This is a UV checker. This is, here, I'm going to make this a smart object, which is always what you want to do when you're sort of mocking things up and you're moving and you're retranslating stuff, because what making something a smart object does is it re-rasterizes it from the source every time. So the more you manipulate something, if you do that with a non-smart object, the more, like, you can go this big with a smart object, and then you can go this big, and you don't lose the detail because that is rasterizing the original, as opposed to if you tried that with a non, here, I'll make a copy and rasterize. If you tried that with a non-smart object, what happens? You're going to get this, and then you're going to get this blur. Okay, so just another tip here. Work with smart objects when you can. They have certain limitations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I approach. I'm going to rotate the canvas because I just prefer looking at it like this. So I'm going to put this here, and you're going to see immediately. Actually, I'm going to make it overlap here, okay? And this is also another thing about when I work on textures. I tend to work from the middle out. It's kind of like stretching a canvas. If you're painting, you should always kind of work from the middle to the out edges, because then it frees you to sort of fan out when you're doing these joins. It just simplifies things a lot. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a little bigger, and then I'll make this texture available too. It's not going to be centered per se, but anyway, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to turn off my guide edges. What I'll do is make the wireframe a little bit transparent so that when you save it, Targa template. I'm gonna go to my PC because yeah, I do all this on my Mac because I have about 30 years um, of muscle memory, and I'm not gonna change. So here you go. Instantly we have a preview, and you see right away a good idea of what's going on. Now, how do you suddenly make this connect? That is the question. So what you do is, this one's pretty easy to infer, like where these connect. And you can see I've made this basically a drawing of how edges connect and where they go. And I do this before I've really done any serious work. All these liveries that I've done recently, I just went on vacation, and all these really tricky connection liveries, I did like 99% of this work without access to a PC. I just all did it all in Photoshop, and all courtesy of this like graph. And then I went and I fixed up some minor issues when I got home. So you want to draw one of these things. Whatever livery you're doing, you're going to want to draw this just because it takes a lot of the guesswork out. You're just like, okay, I know this is going to join up to that. This is going to join up here. And, so you're going to do a lot of testing before you understand what these are, how these connect, and how they're actually facing, because he doesn't necessarily, it's not really clear to you until you use something like this where you can see what the connections are. Turn this off, the guide edges, because that's what we're going to build. But right away you can sort of see this pretty much like corresponds to this edge. It's pretty obvious because you're looking at, these two tie like that, and this. But you can test that. And how do you test that? Well, we'll just look. I mean, we can see that we've got a little bit of the edge of the 5 here, and we're going into this orange 5. Yeah, and so it's not really, sorry, my choppy connection to my machine upstairs. But you can see, yeah, that's exactly what we have here. So we can say, okay, well, I know this. Let's make a new shell guide. And, you could use the line tool, which I typically do, but because this has really nicely, I'm going to reset the rotation, because this has, like, they've done an exceptional job with the UVs. If you ever worked in 3D, like, this is a lot of work to make this. And what's really amazing about iRacing's UVs is they are they are symmetrical, and that is not easy. That is a lot of work, and someone deserves a raise for working this hard. Not completely seamless, because you do have objects that don't appear. It's not a perfectly symmetrical model. But what you can do is I'm gonna on my shell guide, I'm going to go to the brush tool, and this one supports symmetry. And you can, if you turn on horizontal symmetry, and you can see that actually right in the dead center already, you don't have to make any adjustments. You can draw symmetrically. So if I draw, now that we've verified what we suspected, that this edge corresponds, and my brush has, I'm using my pen tablet, hold on. If I hold shift and I draw a line here, okay, maybe I'll make it a little thicker, the brush, okay. And then we use this one. So we've started basically the operation of clarifying, and then because symmetry's on, you've reduced half your work. So this is your first approach, and the basic logic of everything. It's a lot of work, but at the same time, if you want to do seamless, materials, it's going to take a lot of the guesswork out. The next part is, how do you, like, you'll notice that this is, if you're looking to make this grid fit on the model, you have a problem, right? You want this straight looking thing to flow across the edges of the model or something like that. What do you have to do? Well, okay, let's solve this two ways. What you can do is these join areas are complicated. You don't want to deal with these. Like these are, if you can reduce your work by basically not doing, I'll show you like the bad approach and the good approach. We want to do, well, basically don't put a join, like a really complicated join where all of these things are gonna, like right there. Don't put this little seam that's like 2 pixels wide right on the edge, because it's gonna basically pick up the eye if it's slightly misaligned. You want to make your job easy, so what you do is just, if you have an area where it's flat in your thing, in your texture, put it there, and then reduce your work, because it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to make this seam invisible than if it's like this and you've got like this line crossing over into the other UV shell, and then you have to duplicate it over here. So just make your job easier. And then, okay, so let's for the sake of argument say that we want this to conform to the bend of the wireframe. I'm gonna use, there's two ways to do it. The best, there are really good tools. Again, we're in a smart object, because this is, again, you can do these transforms with smart objects. Puppet Warp is really good for this, okay? And what it does is it lets you set these pins, okay? And then distort, and then I'm gonna hit Command H to hide the actual kind of triangle wireframe. And what it does is let's move it just a little bit like this, okay? And then, you can create this kind of, we're winging it here, okay? I mean, okay. So let's say that's kind of what we want. Oops. Okay, so let's okay that, okay? What do we have now? We have this layer here, and I'm gonna put that's my shortcut for creating a layer mask. I'm gonna make it transparent. And oh look, we're working actually the symmetrical didn't work with, I'm gonna turn off symmetry, because the symmetrical transform didn't work with the puppet warp, so we're kind of not gonna use that anymore. Okay. Okay. So this is your start for this. Now we're gonna make these two join up. I'm gonna rotate this because I just want to. Now we're gonna copy this layer, okay? Oh, you know what? I'm gonna show you a trick. This is the trick I use. And I'm gonna ignore this top edge. Let's forget about that. Let's just kind of go from here. And what you want to do, I always work with the wireframes kind of visible, because it's basically essential. You can make them different colors. You can make them semi-transparent. But you have to pay attention to all this stuff, because what you're doing is you're kind of counting edges and to understand, like, okay, if I wanted to build a line, I want to understand, we kind of have a hint here about where these are connecting, because there's the thing for on the model. But if I wanted to make another line, I would go like count 1 2 3, sorry, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5. Oops, wrong thing. Where's my bush? Right, that's thing too thick, but you get the idea. Where was I going with the? Sorry, I got brain fog from the Rona. Okay, so my trick is, let's go from here. When you want to create a seamless thing, you can select just inside that edge, but make sure to make it kind of just close enough that to the edge that you only have like a couple pixels of overlap. And then you're gonna click inside and click inside, and then what you do is go all the way down here. Okay. And then when you'll notice I'm selecting on the outer region here. What this is going to do, when I float this, let's turn this off, and then I'm going to copy it, okay? Copy, paste, and it's going to paste it in place. Now we have this floating thing. This is no longer a smart object, the pasted thing, so just be wary that, you be aware that you're going to be kind of distorted data at this point, so that's one of the downsides to this hacky method. But what it lets you do is, I'm going to put this, now that, because you have this, you went inside the edge here, right? That's the UV shell edge. What you can do is you can put it just outside, because you want a hair of padding along there, otherwise you're going to get these slivers of pixels showing through. And of course, because the canvas is rotated visually, I'm doing everything wrong. Okay, so now what you can do is you can use, say, the puppet warp, or you can use edit. Where's the warp, the transform? Why am I on crack? Where did transform go with the warp? Oh, here, transform path. That's weird that they changed the name. So warp also works. You can kind of use that often, but the puppet warp is really good because it lets you set as much detail as you want. I'm gonna hide the edges. And now what we've got, actually, you want to pin like the areas are fixed, right? And then you can start to, and because we know exactly where these are going to go based on what we've, like the padding, right? And then we can see so we can know that, and then we eyeball this. We know that this edge it connects to this in 3D model. So we kind of eyeball this and we say, oh, okay, well, that looks about right. We can verify it in iRacing, and then we'll go down and we'll do the same thing. And the puppet warp's going to do this really nice transition. Okay. And instantly you can see, and now already, because you have these edges are not actually like they're not equally distant. You can see right here, you got this has to come down, or is it this one? This is the fun of making seamless textures. Welcome to the world of this stuff. So you're gonna kind of eyeball its distance from from this wireframe, and it's this one, and you say, okay, that's about right. And then you go further down, and you do the same thing. Oops. And you say, okay, well, this one looks like it. And if you have, the more of these drawn like guides you have, the less you're going to be doing guesswork, and the less mistakes you're going to make. So let's not go all the way down the edge. I don't feel like it's redundant at this point. We'll just sort of look at this area and see if we've got what we've done. So we'll hide our wireframe, and we'll save out our TGA. And we'll go there, and I will copy over my thing from Dropbox, and there you have it. So we didn't this is tricky because I'm kind of in the wrong spot for rotation, but you can see that the edges that we cared about, these first ones and where it joins, are seamless. And in areas like this where almost no one's going to be able to see this because they're going to be outside there, or no one's going to see this edge here, you can tend to not care about it. And we were smart about where we made the join, right? You can see that this area on the seam would be a pain in the ass because it would thicken or thin this edge. But and so we can go back and we can say, oh, okay, well, we've got below the 3 we have work to do, and so you just go and fix that edge. And so that's pretty much it. That's how you get crazy seamless textures. Like, this took a ridiculous amount of work, This is an old school skateboard design, and you know you can get away with a certain amount of hackery on here because it has a very collage aesthetic, but there is a lot of crazy joins going on. And but if you want like a fully seamless, come on, you can do it. A fully seamless one like this Mandy one. This is a great movie. I made a little poster one of. You know, you can see that this is like seamless. So there you have it. That's the magic of how you make seamless textures for liveries.